Hi, how's it going? I'm resident of Collingwood, and joining me is the author of the Dark Shadows Daybook, Patrick McCray. How are you, man?
I'm tired. I've done the work of the just. I just opened to play. So that's been a that's been a thing, and it was good. It still plays tomorrow night, and it's one of the reasons why I haven't been doing as much Rondo Award recruiting as I would like to. However, I have dropped the prices, I think, to the lowest that Amazon will allow. So as many people as possible can get the book and read it. So I think the the physical copy of the book's like $9.59 or something. I think I make a few quarters of a cent or something off that, but that's okay. And then the the Kindle book I think is $2.99 or something, but it's just crazy cheap. So I opened to play. I spent the past 2 days trying to perfect a specialized wig where a character has an axe sticking out of the back of his head but keeps on talking, and it's a comedy. It keeps on talking and doing stuff for the duration of it. So I'm actually still in the theater, which is appropriate since Mitch Ryan was a man of the theater, and Mitch Ryan grew up going to the theater that decades later I would work at, the movie theater that was our shared neighborhood movie theater when he was a kid, and then when I was a kid.
Right. For those who don't know, yesterday morning, I believe, Mitchell Ryan, sorry, had passed away at the age of 88 years old. Before we get started talking about him, let's take a moment of silence for the late Mitchell Ryan. Right. Sorry about that.
No,
But yeah, he passed away yesterday morning. He's cast as Burke Devlin in 1966. How great was he as this character?
you know, he was not only fantastic, but we have a really rare opportunity. With most of these actors, you don't get a chance to do a double blind. You don't get a chance to have someone else in the part and see how they do. Now, Burke was in a very decidedly different place in his life by the time Anthony George was playing him. So we don't see Anthony George playing the ruthless Burke Devlin quite as much.
Right.
But we do get to see Mitch Ryan play more of the healed Burke Devlin that Ryan would specialize in. So, so I think the proof of the pudding's in the eating, and we can see how the two actors approached the part. And there's nothing wrong with Anthony George, but Mitch Ryan had the amazing ability. For one thing, he got the show launched. The central mystery of the show isn't about Bill Malloy or a pen or any of that. It's what exactly is Burke going to do? Is Burke a good guy? Is he a bad guy? Is he going to kill Roger? Is he going to be David's father? Is he going to marry Vicky, or is he going to stab her? You don't know. And that question, that core question, is what drove viewers, I think, ultimately to turn in day after day after day, that this one figure that we think is going to give us some kind of solace and control over this world is a wild card. And that is what would be carried on with Barnabas and be carried on with Quentin but very much Barnabas. I think that tone was set by Mitch Ryan, and like Jonathan Frid, Mitch Ryan had the ability to project two diametrically opposed sensibilities, and yet somehow do it so that there was no contradiction between them.
It's funny. I kept showing you guys at the Collinsport Historical Society had showed the video clip of where Mitchell Ryan's Burke Devlin and Victoria Winters get off the train, and she comes up to him and she asks him, she asked him a question. He goes, I don't know what they have here, not anymore. And she goes, well, how do they expect people to get around? He says, on broomsticks and unicorns and chauffeured cars. And he says, I can give you a ride. And she says, thank you, Mr. Devlin. He goes, Devlin, Burke Devlin. And he says, welcome to the beginning and end of the world, Miss Winters. And I was playing this for my nephew, and he says, what is that? And I said, it's Dark Shadows. And I kept watching it in front of him, that clip. And there's a really moment that Mitchell Ryan, and all the actors do this on Dark Shadows, but I really notice this with Mitchell Ryan. Man, he really sells with his face greatly.
Oh yeah.
When Victoria Winters, Alexander Isles mentions Collingwood, he goes from smiling to serious in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
And it's done so well. I mean, it's magnificent.
It really is. It really is. Yeah. You're dealing with not only a very fine stage actor, but a stage actor from a really weird town. Louisville builds us. Hey, who turned out the lights? Hang on. I'm putting the theater away for the night as I'm talking to you. Louisville builds us into strange and ambiguous characters. So, and Mitch is a theater actor. We forget that. He remained a theater actor. He was a member of the Actors Studio along with Chris Pennock. He acted Arthur Miller on Broadway. So this is a really, really, really extraordinary guy in the talent department, and a good actor. Both fears and embraces something like television, because normally they can't do very subtle work with their face. You have to be very expressive as a stage actor because people are hundreds of feet away. But in the case of Dark Shadows, that camera is right up there, and so you have almost this charging bull of a performer who's just waiting for the chance to show what he can do, and this is that chance.
I really love how on the train too, when you see his face, he's sort of smirking, and
yes,
he's like waiting in anticipation. He's like a kid in a candy store almost. He can't wait to get back, and that's
he's waiting 5 years at least.
Right,
5 years in prison. Then how many years did he spend plotting or whatever?
Right, and I think manslaughter. It's called vehicular manslaughter, but it was called manslaughter in the show.
Yeah.
And I think he was, it was a 10-year sentence. He serves 5 for good behavior. So, which I like, the plot made sense. He comes back because he says later on that he made a deal with a very interesting character.
Does he say that?
I think he says interesting character.
Who's the interesting character? Is it like the devil? Is that what?
That's the thing. He never says, and it makes you wonder because there's a guy who works with Burke Devlin whose name is Blair. Now he doesn't say his name's Nicholas, right? So we don't. It's really funny because later on we do get a Nicholas Blair So I sort of got to ask you, do you think that this could have been maybe the Leviathan working with Devlin and him not knowing?
Sure. I mean, the thing is because we both know for a fact that no, this was not the case in terms of the writing of the series
Right.
and their intentionality. But now that the show is written, the interpretation of it and the truth of what it implies is as legitimate with you as it is with me and with the writers. So if you can find evidence in the text that suggests that Burke was hooked up with the Leviathans, then man, he was hooked up with the Leviathans. And that's a fun story element, and the show is better for you.
Right. Right. I think you talked about Anthony George a bit too. I think the biggest difference is you're right, Burt Devlin, by the time Anthony George comes on, Burt Devlin, he's really turned the corner. He's made up with Carolyn by this point, and that was Burt Devlin that did make up with Carolyn. Carolyn
Yeah.
sort of, forgave him. I think that's something that gets lost, because again, Burke Devlin Burke Devlin, Mitchell Ryan isn't around a whole lot after Barnabas shows up. He's around, I think, only a couple more episodes. And then after Maggie gets kidnapped and then is found, and they say she's dead, that's when we get Anthony George, is after Maggie's death is revealed, which is interesting. But before all that happens, I mean, Burke goes through a lot of things. A lot of Dark Shadows characters do, but Burke Devlin goes from, I mean, really avenging Crusader, and he even I love how he recruits Mrs. Johnson on his side to.
Oh yeah, she's his mole.
Right.
Yeah, she's his agent, his secret agent.
Right. What do you think of the dynamic of Mitchell Ryan's Burke Devlin, Carolyn being sort of, and I don't know what you want to call it, love or lust, and then
Yeah.
and then here's Mrs. Johnson who's willing to spy for him. All these elements around Mitchell Ryan's character were amazing.
Sure. I mean, just pure, it's pure eroticism. That Mrs. Johnson cannot help but be compelled by womanly urges for Burke, and this is just what happened. I don't know if that's true. She's really concerned about the freshness of roast beef. I remember that. I don't know if that's a metaphor for anything. Burke is a man who knows what women are if you are Burke Devlin.
Yeah.
He is completely aware of the full operational power of that fully operational battle station. And he exploits it. I think Burke probably was a really nice guy for a long time. And these things didn't occur to him. And after spending a long enough time in prison, I think he just thought he probably gained a certain ruthlessness. And he began to think, you know what, to hell with this. I'm working for Mel Brooks. Is it to hell with this? I am going to use every method at my disposal, including the screen going black for a moment to check on my Uber, to avenge where I am now. No more Mr. Nice Guy.
Right. I think too, there's a big difference between his relationship with Carolyn, where he's sort of more humoring her, to his relationship with Victoria Winters, which he's one of many that's been telling Vicky, hey, go home, get out of here. But I think Burke's go home, get out of here, it isn't necessarily a threat to her. It's more of a warning, like, hey, you don't really want to be not just caught in the middle between me and them, but be up there with them, because they're dangerous. I think Burke in many ways is trying to warn Vicky, without being so direct about it. And it's
I agree.
And there's moments Burke Devlin is just shocking when him and Alexandra Isles, when they kiss in Burke's hotel room. I was shocked. I was not expecting
Really?
Burke to kiss Vicky.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it certainly is. It's right up there with the shocking and banned Jason McGuire episode. But there is no shocking and banned Jason McGuire episode. Actually, wouldn't that be great? I don't know. Be kissing. I don't know. Anyway, yeah. So that Mitch Ryan, great guy. I think. Okay, so here's the quintessential question about Mitch and his character: hero or heel?
Hero or heel? He is a hero. He's not a heel. I think.
Okay, I agree.
Here's what I'll say. Okay, one of my favorite characters, the Shadow, takes evil and he fights it. He uses it against itself. Okay, gangsters have mob bosses have gangsters. The Shadow
Yes.
has agents. So the Collins family have resources and lawyers. So does Burke Devlin. Okay, the Collins family have loyal people at their disposal. So does Burke Devlin, and Burke Devlin also recruits a private investigator and Bill Malloy's housekeeper. So he's taking the Collinses' tactics and using them against them.
Yes.
So I really don't view. I know he calls himself a heel, but I think he's just more feeling guilty for how he acted. I don't buy that he is one.
Okay, I'll buy that for $1. Um, uh, do you think he would kill Roger?
No, he had the opportunity to kill Roger and didn't.
Okay. Do you think he is David's father?
Yes.
Okay. But that throws off the whole lineage of the Phoenix a little bit, doesn't it?
Well, here's the thing. Here's the big one for you.
Okay.
The Phoenix says David's her child, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, does it if the Phoenix, because the mother is the carrier of the kid, does it really matter who the father is if you're seeking your kid to, burn in an eternal flame? No.
That's a question that has stumped legal scholars for centuries. So I am not the Matlock to sort through such complex legal and philosophical question. I am just a guy looking for an Uber out in the middle of the South one cold March night. Yeah, I can see your point. Does Burke know that he is the father of Daniel or David?
Does he specifically know? No. Because
Okay.
keep in mind, Burke's motives for coming back are at first they are sort of like to get at the Collins family, to get justice for himself. So he's not, again, and even his inquisition into Vicky, even though he somewhat cares for her and he's sort of pulling back on those feelings because he wants to get at the Collins family a bit to get to the truth of everything, he's sort of agreeing to somewhat. He's offered to help her, but I think at times he's more offering to help her to see how to see if any of them react to it. Now, which would have been interesting if we would have got Liz saying, "Hey, leave that girl alone," to like don't mess with my new governess. That would have been a real interesting line. We don't get that, but it just. I think that Burke, honestly.
Stop! Confound it! Stop that car!
Sorry.
Hang on. I'm racing. I gotta catch this Uber. Hang
Yes.
on.
Okay.
You're in a foot chase scene. Do you
I
have
see.
music that you can play?
No, I do not have my
Here
phone.
he goes. He's headed for a roundabout. I may have to steal a golf cart. I don't know. I gotta get him. Okay. This is exciting. You get an
Yes.
action scene.
Yes.
You make it a death scene. I don't know.
Be careful.
Stop! For the love of God. There he goes. Stop! Even the voice isn't working. Oh, see, and if I switch over, we can't talk. But damn it, a man is dead.
Are you all right?
Yeah, I'm fine. And attention must be paid.
I think the thing too is once him and Mrs. Johnson have a very interesting conversation. She says, even the girl, and she's meaning Carolyn and Vicky, and he says, all of them are fair game. And
Oh, Lord.
which I don't blame him. He's wanting to get to the truth of, what happened to him. Like, he knows. The one thing Burke knows for sure is he did not hit that man with the car.
No, of course not.
And that's the thing too. Like, I really always found it interesting when Laura came into the picture, and here's this woman who's sitting in the diner, and
Yeah.
Matt,
I'm doing a pod. Do you mind if I continue?
Maggie's looking at her,
Thank you.
and it's really interesting. And then, once we finally understand that Laura is there for David, and what Laura's a phoenix. I mean, Burke really undergoes one of the bigger changes prior to becoming nice. He is literally being seduced and letting himself be seduced by Laura, which that was shocking to me.
It was beyond shocking. Do you think he could have come any closer to being her advocate and thus exiting the series? Did they have exit points written in for Burke Devlin?
He's being so seduced by her. You're right, to the point of he's trying to be her advocate. But I think a lot of the reasons here that what really causes a lot of the change, because the scene at the cottage where he kisses her and Liz catches them, if nothing had ever happened, if Liz never catches them kissing, if Laura didn't put Liz in a coma, in a catatonic state, I really think Burke may have ended up siding with the Phoenix. But
I think you could be right.
Because of that moment and the involvement of Dr. Peter Guffrey, Carolyn sort of being the matriarch for that period of time, because she really becomes like her mom. I mean, she wants to know, hey, why did this happen to my mother? She sort of becomes a bit like Burke Devlin. She's sort of crusading along with Vicky, and Dr. Guffrey's more of a neutral investigator at first. He's not pointing fingers, which I like.
But
Now,
he's not pulling them either.
Right. Now, if this were Stokes, it would be different.
It's, you'll fight beside him, never behind him.
That's right. What did you think of Dr. Peter Guffrey?
Well, he's the first unconflicted hero in the series. He really heralds, I think, the series taking a different direction, because it's one thing when you have a ghost show up and people say, oh boy, I can't explain that. Right. And then they move on. It's another thing when you have a normative character come on and suddenly say, yes, it is my job to deal with all of this stuff. And I'm a normal, everyday, average guy.
Right. What did you think of Burke Devlin and him he goes from believing Mrs. Johnson to now doubting her during the Phoenix arc.
What do you think of it?
I was shocked. I mean, that's Dark Shadows is just every time I go back and watch this, everything, even though I know it's going to happen, it's still shocking. I know this show, some people might say this show was right for its time, but never away from the way they wrote it. And I know there's things that weren't planned, but even with that, it still makes it ahead of its time. I think and that's another reason why Dark Shadows, the way they wrote their characters, the way they didn't plan for this, they didn't plan for this. It made that's what makes really Dark Shadows as timeless as it is. And you get this character, Burke Tevlin, who recruits this woman, and now he's doubting her. It's like, holy crap, man. Like, it's just shocking.
Yeah, yeah. Well, those twists and turns have to be there, and it's that ambiguity of the characters. They could go for good, they could go for evil at any point. Roger, I think, is a case like that as well.
Right.
That that forces the viewer to keep tuning in. We like closure, and characters like that quintessentially deny us closure.
Right. Now, do you think that he wanted to kill Roger?
Yeah, I think it was certainly one of the elements sitting around the flame of the poo-poo platter of revenge
Right.
that he girded his loins over. I think it's one of the things that there's a really good saying, and it was either H.L. Mencken or Mother Teresa who said, "I never wanted to see a man dead, but I read many an obituary with a really big smile." And I think it was Mencken. But whether it was Mencken or Mother Teresa, I get that feeling, and I think that's how Roger feels about about or that's not how that's how Burke feels about Roger.
I really love the chemistry too between Mitchell Ryan and David Ford's Sam Evans.
Yeah, well, you get so many class differences that get drawn there.
Right.
You've got Mitch, who's a self-made man who kind of climbed up one rung beyond Sam.
Right.
But you've got Mitch's character, and then you got Sam Evans, and you've got Bill Malloy, sort of on one side, and Matthew Morgan even on one side of it, and you have Roger and Liz and Carolyn on the other side, and who is in the middle? Who's in the middle of all of that?
Maggie.
Who,
Well, Maggie. There's a,
I would say Maggie is more on the working class side. No, who's the person on the who strides between the worlds? Is Vicky.
Vicky. Yeah.
It's the perfect dynamic position for the character of Vicky to be in.
Right. And two, she seems too like she's not trying to be loyal to one or the other. She's just trying to be honest with both sides.
Yeah.
She's trying to be honest with Roger, and she's honest with Roger and Liz and Carolyn, but she's also honest with Burke, whether Burke believes her or not. It's like, look, I've not lied to you here. And you're right, she's very much caught in the middle of this big feud between Burke and the Collins family. And
Yeah.
that's the thing too. You know, the character Burke Devlin did not grow up with money. He grew up very.
No, he grew up in Barnacle Alley, where
Yep.
his parents were lobster cleaners, lobster pot cleaners.
Yep.
Yeah, yeah. I wrote an obituary for Burke that's in the day book that is an eerie thing to think about now.
Yeah.
It's an odd odd thing to think about, but I have to remember that was for a fictional character who we
Yeah.
saw die, sort of. We saw the aftermath of his death. Um, one of the things that maybe I wasn't working on was a potential script for a potential presentation, maybe that featured the return of Burke Devlin, and I had a lot of ideas about that, but it dealt very much with what happened to him in Latin America, how he survived the plane crash, where he's been all these years, and he's been sleeping off a vampire curse.
Yeah.
That's the thing, that he had been bitten, I imagine, shortly before he got on the plane, and he was being held by Latin American officials
Oh.
to just see what would happen, and he ended up just sort of non-aging his way through prison, and one way or another he ended up getting cured or partially cured, and comes back to Collinwood in 2021, 22, and that would have been fun. It would have been a Burke. Burke represents the best of a very specific type of character on Dark Shadows, because there are two worlds that get established in Dark Shadows, and one is a world of people who are comfortable with the supernatural,
Yeah.
conversant with the supernatural, who move with the supernatural, and then people who don't.
Right.
And Burke is, honestly, he's one of the people who is not on the supernatural side of things. And he's kind of lucky that, he never really had to deal with it. I don't know how he would deal with Barnabas, really deal with Barnabas if he knew completely what was going on. I suspect Barnabas wouldn't be around for long.
Right.
They just say, "Oh, this guy dies during the day. Great, let's invite him to breakfast."
I'm glad you brought that up, because it sort of brings me back to Anthony George a bit. There's a sequence between Anthony George and Jonathan Fred in the Blue Whale where
the cards and cutlasses scene.
Right.
Yeah.
And after Barnabas tells him about where he was living in the English countryside, who he was living with, and Barnabas leaves, and Burke makes a phone call to England, a long distance phone call. Anthony George's Burke Devlin.
Yeah.
And
Niall Bradford
right,
is the guy.
Yep. And this sort of reminded me of Mitchell Ryan's Burke Devlin right here. This sort of sequence where he's sort of pursuing this secret of what? Wait a minute, a 200-year-old scout. Like, what's going on here? And he's sort of starting to, slowly lift the veil. But Barnabas, instead of killing him, I gotta give credit to Barnabas Collins, because he goes, I don't need to kill him. He goes to Vicky and tells on him. And I just wondered if it would have been Mitchell Ryan, you would have had Alexander looking at Mitchell Ryan going, hey, no, don't, you're not doing this or you'll lose me. I just wonder what that dynamic would have looked like.
It's interesting. I'm not quite sure how that would have played out.
Right.
Would that have been the end of the character, you think?
I'm not sure. I don't think Anthony George plays it wrong. You know what I mean? I want to make this clear. I'm not criticizing the way Anthony George played it, because that's the way it was written too. But yeah. I'm just curious, would they have wrote it that way with Mitchell Ryan still as Burke Devlin?
Oh.
You know what I mean?
You mean tattling on Vicky? Or tattling on Barnabas to Vicky?
Well, when Vicky confronts Burke Devlin, and Burke sort of, he caves. If that would have been Mitchell Ryan, would he?
No way. Okay, I
Right,
see what you're talking about now.
right,
Oh no way, no way. And I mean, the tone of the character, I think, was greatly influenced by the choice of actor.
right,
I mean, clearly, uh, you know, it's Anthony George does not read as particularly intimidating.
right,
Anthony George is a very reasonable Burke Devlin.
right,
And, Mitch Ryan is reasonable up to a point, or his Burke Devlin is reasonable up to a point. But beyond that, uh, you can tell that he's going to take great pleasure in using his fists. I don't see Anthony George doing that.
right.
Do you?
No, I don't.
And that's okay, because the way we write it off is it's an evolution of the character.
I think there's a telltale scene too when when Barnabas has the costume party and Anthony George comes dressed as Jeremiah.
Uh-huh.
He's still playing Burke Devlin, but he's dressed as Jeremiah, and Barnabas is all but in his face and giving him this look. If that would have been Mitch Ryan, he would have said something like, "Is there a problem, Mr. Collins?" We don't get that, and that's sort of that. I guess that would be my biggest question. Is I get it's a different actor,
Yeah.
but why not still try to somewhat
The voice, I see where you're going.
play the character the same way, I guess.
It's not that. It's how the character's written.
Right.
It's how the character's written. And the character is written substantially differently.
Right.
Uh, and I think that writing comes from the writers listening to Anthony George's voice,
Yep.
getting a feel for what his strengths are and what his weaknesses are, and proceeding onward from there.
Yep.
So here's a question. If Burke had gone to the costume party, would he have even gotten in costume? Would Mitch Ryan's Burke, or would he have worn a suit and
He
told
would
Collins he doesn't play dress up?
he wouldn't have humored Vicky, I don't think. I think he would have
No,
came in a suit.
if he showed up at all.
Right, if he shows up at all. Right.
Yeah.
I think those are the
Contest Julia invites him to, he would have worn a suit. It would have been a lot like number 6 going to that costume party on The Prisoner and wearing a tuxedo rather than some sort of goofy outfit.
right. I think that's the thing too, like with Mitchell Ryansburg Devlin, it wouldn't have. He's not coming dressed as Jeremiah. He would have came dressed in his suit. He wouldn't have humored everybody. Like, no, you guys want to play dress up? That's great. I'm here for my girlfriend.
Yeah.
But like you said, even if he would have even showed up at all, and that would have been just an interesting dynamic to just see if that would have happened.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is there a movie that Mitchell Ryan's in that you really, really enjoy?
Sure. There's that one that he did where he played the guy with the gray hair. No, he's great in Lethal Weapon. He's great. I think Loaded Weapon. He's in that. I'm not. I bet you're a fan of his Halloween movies. Me, I can't believe it's taking you this long to bring that. I thought we'd be like spending 5 minutes about Burke Devlin and talking about his Halloween character. But it's his role as Kyle Riker.
Right.
That we need to find someone macho and stalwart enough to put Jonathan Frakes in his place. It's like, if you're dealing with somebody from Mount Olympus, you got to get a Titan
Yep.
to give them any sort of threat. And of course, Mitch Ryan, it's great to see a glimpse of him in that BMX armor and all that other stuff that he thought was amusingly wacky.
And imagine him as Captain Picard. Because if Gene Roddenberry had gotten his way, he would have been Captain Picard. But Gene Roddenberry only created the show. Why listen to him?
Right.
I mean, no problem for Patrick Stewart. It's great, great to see him, but he's no Mitch Ryan.
No, he's not. You're right. I really love Mitchell Ryan's performance as Dr. Terrence Wynn in Halloween 6, The Curse of Michael Myers. He really the movie is full of great actors and great actresses, but Mitchell Ryan really does steal that movie in a lot of ways. His the character's heel turn is done right. I love the way it's done. He's sitting in that chair holding Danny and looking over at Loomis and smiling ear to ear, which is just sinister and cool. But I'll give one better. He's in my favorite Dirty Harry movie, which is Magnum Force. And he plays the cop where Harry Callahan suspects that he's one of the Magnum Force, like killing the criminals. And the way Mitchell Ryan plays this guy is crazy and sort of, you get why. And I love the way Mitchell Ryan plays the character because it's so edgy. And it's really just, I know his character gets killed off, which sucks.
Yeah.
But the time he's on screen, he really makes an impact quick, and I love him.
It's a sudden impact.
It is. Yes. I love it.
Does he have any steamy love scenes with Tyne Daly in that?
Well, Tyne.
Is that in a movie?
No, in Sudden
was she in the one with the orangutans in the truck?
No. In Sudden Impact, you're right. Tyne Daly is in the third Dirty Harry movie, and so she becomes his partner in that because the fourth Dirty Harry movie is Dirty Harry takes on a vigilante, and no, it's not Paul Kersey, unfortunately. Which would have been cool. But in the third movie, yes, Tyne Daly does become Clint Eastwood, aka Dirty Harry's partner. It's a bit of a slow movie, even though it's not terribly long. But hey, there's no love sequences though.
Okay, so she doesn't like. Yeah, well, that's a good. I guess that's a good thing. She did have love sequences with another Dark Shadows alum, John Carlin. Oh. So why does Tyne Daly keep interfering with passed on Dark Shadows actors? And what skeleton from Chris Pennock's closet are we waiting for? Is there lost footage from Francis where Tyne Daly shows up and puts the moves on him? What is Tyne up to? Why is she here? Was she Kyle Riker's, part? Is she William Frakes' or Jonathan Frakes' mother? I don't know. But I think you're responsible for answering these, and I want answers now. Just kidding. I think Mr. Ryan would find this conversation amusing. He had a very good sense of humor. My interview with him was probably, it was the easiest interview I think I've ever done. He was really enthusiastic, very easy to talk to. The fact that he and I had all these weird little things in common. We were both sitting at microphones, for instance. Who knew? Why would we have been doing that? It was Christmas Day for both of us. But no, he grew up very close to where I grew up. So we were talking about the same landmarks. He went to high school at the same high school as my mother. And I had to avoid making him feel too old when he's, what was her name? And it's like, oh, Mitch, you'd been out of high school for like 14 years at that point. If you knew her name from someone that you were dating when she was in high school, I think we're all probably, going to be wearing stripes soon if we had this conversation. So no, you didn't know her. You didn't know her. Trust me. But it was fun. And allegedly, what I've heard is that he was pals with Ned Beatty,
cool,
who's from Louisville and is of that generation. And he was pals with a guy named Charlie Kissinger. Charlie Kissinger is someone you need to know about because he acted for a weird director named William Girdler, who made Grizzly and Day of the Animals. But before, in The Manitou, with Tony Curtis about a possession, a demonic possession. But before he made that, he made The Asylum of Satan and 3 on a Meat Hook. So he had some sense of art before he sold out. And Charlie Kissinger was in those movies. He was also the local, you're fascinated by this. He was also the host of the local Louisville horror TV show called called Fright Night. And he was in those movies, and I think he was pals with Mitch Ryan.
Cool.
You know, and maybe they all hung out with Victor Jory. I don't know, because he was from Louisville.
Victor Jory is in the best Shadow. Well, it's a Shadow serial, actually. It's not a movie.
Yeah.
But to me, he did the best Shadow laugh ever.
Yeah. Victor Jory, his son, founded or was one of the founders of one of the most important theaters in America. And there is a theater named after Victor Jory.
Cool. Awesome.
That you can go. And I went to high school with Victor Jory's granddaughter.
Awesome, man.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Is there a character you wish Mitchell Ryan would have either played?
Captain Picard.
Oh,
boom, done.
Well, Captain Picard, but is there a character, maybe another character in Dark Shadows you wish Mitchell Ryan would have played?
No.
No.
And I'll tell you why. I'm not saying that he didn't have range, but I think in 1795 he was just too. He would have made a good Nathan Forbes.
Yes, he would have. But
then we wouldn't have been able to see, Joel as Nathan Forbes or Joe Carruthers as Nathan Forbes, and so that's a good thing. In 1897, maybe, but it's so good to have him just as Burke Devlin and just identified that way that I think let's leave it there. And also my phone is running out of battery. Who would you, before we go, who would you like to see him play?
There's 2 characters I would have loved to see the late Mitchell Ryan play that he never did get to play, and I think he would have made a perfect. I never heard his laughter, the way he laughed, but I would love to have had him play the Shadow. He would have made, I think.
Oh, you're like other characters, not like on Dark Shadows.
Right. Well, and another character I would have loved for him to play. You want to talk instead of now if they would have made it sooner, not Star Trek but Stargate, Colonel Jack O'Neill.
Sure. Mitch would have been fine in that. I thought we were just talking about Dark Shadows because I was going to say your choice was going to be Pansy Faye. As there's like Trask's brother who gets possessed by Pansy Faye. And can you imagine? God, that should be so good. I would say Mitch Ryan as Indiana Jones.
Yes.
I'll watch that. And while we're at it, why not have him as Han Solo? Why not? And with that, I must fly casual. It's been a long night. You've seen me run. Run, Forrest, run. You've seen me run. You've seen me do all sorts of amazing things. And my little life is rounded with a sleep.
First of all, thank you, Patrick McCray, for stopping by and joining me. It is always a pleasure, sir. I'm
glad I got to see Mitch off like this.
To the friends and family of the late Mitch Ryan, you have our deepest sympathies. But thank you again, Patrick, man. Link to Patrick's article of the late Mitch Ryan will be in the description box. You guys have a great night, and Patrick, you have a great night, man.
Thank you, sir. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.